not a perfume.
It was a no-doubter.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We are up in the bird's nest here at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. I'm Brendan Mortensen alongside Annie Klaff. Annie, we are back in Baltimore. Kind of the same weather as it was in Florida, though. We brought the weather back with us a little bit. It's one of my favorite dadisms, I think, by the way, is like we brought the weather with us. It's right up there with, the day after it rains when a dad is like, man, we needed this.
Okay, that's a wild start to this conversation.
I'm just like, there's so many good dadisms.
Yeah,
I catch
sure.
myself doing it while I'm watching football, especially. I think, like, I'll just shout at a defensive end and go, like, somebody set an edge. Like, that's a great dadism.
One of my favorites from my own dad is when I was playing soccer in high school, my dad was like, Annie, your defense is like Swiss cheese out there. And I was like,
Love it.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think there's enough in baseball. I can't think of a good baseball dadism. Outside of maybe like the
Way to
put
soak
the ball in play.
Way to soak
Stop
it,
trying to
kid.
hit a home run.
Yeah.
I mean, there's good little league ones that I remember, but those aren't dadisms. That's just like stupid catchphrases that you would say, like when one of your buddies gets hit in little league, and you're like, "We got ice." Like,
no. We should start making a list or creating some for big league play.
We should.
Some dadisms.
Because there's not enough for baseball.
No,
That's my take for this podcast, is that there are a lot of dadisms for football, not a lot of dadisms for baseball.
Maybe
and we need
Ramon.
more.
Maybe Ramon Reminder can be one.
A Ramon reminder?
Yeah.
That would be good to add in there.
We could catchphrase that one.
Hopefully we can start that trend a little bit. But today, Annie, we're going to be talking spring storylines because we are just, a week and a half into spring training at this point, and the takes are already flying. As is usually the case with spring training, there are always ridiculously hot takes based on about 3 exhibition games. So we are going to run through some of the topics and some of the takes that we have heard on Orioles Twitter and otherwise about this Orioles squad thus far. I'm going to start with Heston Kjerstad because Heston Kjerstad goes oppo for a home run yesterday. He has had a nice start to spring thus far, which again is 3 games to this point. Heston Kjerstad, Mike Elias has talked about him as a guy who should be a big league contributor, should earn big league at-bats. So the first hot take I'm going to throw out there. Heston Kjerstad hits at least 20 home runs.
Now, I'm so glad that we're starting with this one, Brendan, because this is maybe my favorite one because I'm so pro Heston, it's not even funny.
Sure.
But like you said, I think that with Elias saying that he doesn't necessarily need to mash in spring training for him to get those everyday at-bats. We spoke with Heston last week in Sarasota, kind of asked him about if there's any lessened pressure for him because of that. Because obviously the O's have brought in some outfielders in Ramon Laureano and Tyler O'Neill, you name it. So, but Heston says he's just going to maintain the same kind of mentality as last season. But I do still think that means regardless of if he says he's going to keep his own kind of mentality and mindset, I do think that there will be lessened pressure for him. I do think he also has the edge as that 4th outfielder over Ramon Laureano. So I really think that Heston just hasn't had that many opportunities for consistent at-bats in the past, and he hasn't really been able to prove the raw power that definitely is there. I mean, he's gotten lots of praise from teammates in the past, from Gunnar Henderson and whatnot for his raw power, and I really do think that with some more at-bats coming up this season, he will be able to prove that, as well as hopefully not getting hit by a pitch again and getting concussed, because I think that was a huge roadblock to his season last year and when he was performing pretty decently for last season. Yeah,
I think all of that is true. I think 20 home runs might be a
little
bit lofty. I've seen some takes on Twitter over the last few days. I saw a number this morning that predicted Heston Kjerstad would hit 33 home runs.
That is a lot.
That's so many. 33 home runs is so many. And I love Heston Kjerstad, and he has a really good power bat. Looking at the numbers a little bit, though, if he had a home run every 20 at-bats, that would put him top 75 in the league. Yeah. I think you could make an argument that Heston Kjerstad might have a top 75 just raw power bat in Major League Baseball. I think that's a fair argument that you could make. That's not out of the question at all. So if he hits a home run every 20 at-bats, which is really good, top 75 in the league, he would need 400 plate appearances.
That's a good point.
400 at-bats to hit 20 home runs. 400 at-bats is so many at-bats for the role that we are expecting Heston Kjerstad to have. If Tyler O'Neill stays healthy, if there is a solid rotation of 3, 4, maybe even 5 outfielders at a time, it's going to be hard for Heston Kjerstad to have 400 at-bats.
Do you think Tyler O'Neill and Ramon Laureano, both of which have had injury stints in the past,
I mean, you'd like to think that they stay healthy,
yeah.
right? And I'm not going to make Heston Kjerstad's projection based on Tyler O'Neill getting injured for a large stretch of time. So hopefully Tyler O'Neill stays on the field. But even if there are injuries, I mean, Cedric Mullins got 450 at-bats last year and played 147 games. I don't see Heston Kjerstad playing that many games.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a significant contributor to this team. But I would estimate that, again, if everybody stays healthy and things go well, we're looking at something closer to what Ramon Urias gave you last year games-wise, which was right around 100, right around 300 plate appearances. So I would project that Heston Kjerstad is somewhere around the 17, 18 home run range.
Which would still be great.
Which would still be amazing. Mm-hmm. I'm not expecting Heston Kjerstad to hit 33 home runs. That's so many.
That is a lot.
That's so many. So I think Heston Kjerstad is going to be good. I think 20 would be a great number to hit. I would be surprised if he got there, but we'll see. I mean, Kjerstad could establish himself as an everyday type of player like Colton Cowser did last year, and then all of a sudden he's on that 25, 30 home run track. But let's jump to another player that hit a home run in yesterday's game. Maybe not one that you would think, and it's Enrique Bradfield Jr., who went yardo yesterday. Pull side, absolutely mashed a home run. That's not what he's known for, but he put on a lot of weight this offseason. That was a focus for him to go to the weight room and to help evolve his offensive game. The offensive numbers were awesome at Bowie to end the year last season. So here's this take, Annie. We see Enrique Bradfield Jr. in the big leagues at some point this season. Is that an overreaction or not?
I don't think so. I think this is an aggressive.
Let's get on the train.
This is an aggressively lukewarm take, in my opinion.
Lukewarm?
Lukewarm.
That Enrique Bradfield Jr. is on the team at some point this season?
At some point this season. It could be like end of August.
Wow.
September. But I do think he will make the big leagues this season. He'll get his major league stint. I know what the fans are thinking. I know what the listeners are thinking, that maybe we were going to bring up a storyline about Samuel Basallo, but no, we're going to talk about Enrique Bradfield Jr.
I think Samuel Basallo making the team is a lukewarm take. I do think Enrique Bradfield Jr. making the team at some point this season is still a hot take. I think lukewarm. I think we're on the hype train a little bit.
We are on the hype train.
Which makes it feel lukewarm.
I will admit, maybe I'm a little bit biased here, but I do think that in other ball clubs, his defense kind of makes him 100% ready to be a big league contributor. The swing and the bat is definitely not there yet, for sure. But yet a two-run home run yesterday is still a great sign. But I do think that his defense, his speed, is something that this Orioles clubhouse is really excited about and could use in that outfield as well, because if you have Enrique, Colton Cowser, Heston, all really speedy guys, that would be a really fun thing to watch. He's also getting bigger, not to be confused with not being faster, because it has made him faster as well. I again, like I mentioned with O'Neill and Laureano's injury histories, who knows whether that will contribute to if we see Enrique Bradfield Jr. in the big leagues at some point this season. But I would love to see him into the big leagues. The bat for sure still needs a lot of work. But I think that would be amazing. Plus, the O's could use his base stealing abilities, because he broke records in Double-A and minor leagues in general for his base stealing. And that's a huge point of emphasis for the O's clubhouse this offseason, is what Hyde said, is they're trying to steal some more bases.
I know it's a hot take. I don't think it's an overreaction. I think we see him. I know we're on the hype train, but I don't think we see him in July.
Yeah.
I would imagine that Bradfield probably spends half the year in Double-A Bowie, maybe half the year in Triple-A Norfolk. But you're right, the speed and defense are already so good that, that was the hot take I had last year. Obviously did not come to fruition that Enrique Bradfield Jr. would make the playoff roster last season. That was a ridiculous take. I think for this year...
That's what this episode is for.
Right. I think for this year it's less ridiculous, because if we get to September and rosters expand to 28 players and you need somebody that's just a great defensive replacement and just a pinch runner.
Yeah.
Enrique Bradfield Jr. could get 2 at-bats in the playoffs and still be a contributor and on that roster for a good reason because of his defense and his speed. So I know it's probably a hot take. I don't think it's an overreaction that we could see Enrique Bradfield Jr. on this team.
Lukewarm may be a little bit of a stretch.
That was a little bit aggressive.
We'll say just below hot.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. We can go with that. All right. Here's another take. Tomoyuki Sugano. The hype train. We were on the Enrique Bradfield Jr. hype train. Everybody else is on the Tomoyuki Sugano hype train. After one bullpen session where the command looked excellent, the movement on his pitches was really, really good. Sugano, I mean, we know the media presence has been there. We saw it at spring training. Really exciting to see. It was a 1.67 ERA, less than 1 walks per 9 innings last year. He was the MVP in the KPB. Here's the overreaction. Tomoyuki Sugano will be the 3rd best starting pitcher in the Orioles rotation next season.
I think I'm pro Tomoyuki Sugano, just like I'm pro all of these guys, but I think it might be slightly an overreaction because you're still competing with Dean Kramer, who put up great numbers for the O's last season, Charlie Morton, who's a very seasoned veteran, both of which Tomo and Charlie Morton are seasoned veterans in their own respective leagues, but Morton obviously has had more time in the league that they're playing in this season. What I will say is I do think that if his 2.6% walk rate and command translates to U.S. hitters, then I think that this could be accurate because you have the command and you pair it with Zach Eflin. That would be a really, really great top 3 guys in the starting rotation in Eflin, Grayson Rodriguez, and Tomo. I think we saw in a live bullpen session right after we had left Sarasota that he did give up some contact to guys like Dylan Beavers and Judd Fabian, Enrique Bradfield Jr. It still has not been that long for Tomo to acclimate and be able to give 100% in the U.S. because he's still coming off of an 18-hour flight a week or so ago and acclimating to a different strike zone and different – just everything is different for him, and I do think that we will still get to see him acclimate up until opening day. Have yet to see a great kind of showing and give 100% from him. Today will be that chance as he is taking the mound in today's exhibition game, so we will get a bit of a better idea. What I do think is really cool is Koji Uehara said to Rock Kubatko yesterday in the press box that Tomo is better and more famous than he was. These guys are former teammates in Japan in 2018, 2019. And Uehara also said that Tomo told him that his splitter will be better in the U.S. comparatively to when his slider was definitely his best in Japan. So there will be a lot of things to see. I think 3rd best might be a little bit of a stretch because the rotation, it has a lot of depth right now, but I don't think that the media attention is an overreaction.
Yeah, I think I would probably lean overreaction here as well, not even because I don't think it might be true. I think there is a chance that Sugano becomes the 3rd best starting pitcher in this rotation. My general takeaway with the hype train is just like, relax a little bit because he hasn't thrown a pitch against another team's big league hitters. At this point, we saw him in a live batting practice down in Sarasota. We haven't seen him do anything else. Even the exhibition game today, I'm excited to see him play another team and see what the stuff looks like going up against hitters, seeing him for the first time. But I want to see him pitch in the regular season for like
before we make
5 games before we assess how good he is at the big league level. It's just really hard to tell at this point. And I know the hype train is just chugging down the station here because of the media attention. And, you know, there's Rock Kubatko mentioned it on MASNsports.com this morning, but the live bullpen session, you had to reserve a spot to be able to see it because there were just swarms of people trying to watch him. So it's easy to get swept up in that. But I agree. Dean Kramer's upside, like if there's a good Dean Kramer game and he gives you 7 innings, 2 earned, 9 strikeouts, he is very capable of that. Charlie Morton, I think, can just be all reliable. Again, that's what he's done for his entire career. So I would put my hypothetical money on Morton and Kramer, you know, having higher upside at the big league level at this point, just because we haven't seen Sugano do it. But that's not to say that he can't do it. I think right now, it's just if you have the take that Sugano is going to be incredible because of all the hype that's surrounding him in spring training, just zoom out a little bit. Dude needs to pitch at the big league level. All right, next overreaction here, Andy. The bullpen will be a top 5 unit in baseball.
This one is a little bit tricky because I think as much as we don't want to base things off of injuries, I do think part of it relies on if Felix Bautista is 100%
Yeah, you
back
don't want
or
to
not.
base things off of injuries, but when you get arguably the most dominant reliever in baseball back in some capacity, that leads to you having some
And as of right now, I do think that Bautista can be 100% by opening day because he's updated media time in, time out throughout spring training on where he is. He said at the beginning that he started at about 80% and really is confident that he'll be at 100% by opening day. He told the media through interpreter Brandon Quinones yesterday, I do feel content with where I am right now, and I know that with the work that I'm putting in and the progression that I'll continue going through, I know that I can get back to those previous forms. Those previous forms in 2023 is going to be hard to get back to.
Yeah.
Everything aside from maybe 4 metrics in StatCast was in the red.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really hard to get back to, especially after being out for 18 months with Tommy John surgery. But on the other side of things, I do think that this bullpen has really, really good depth because, yes, you lost Danny Coulombe, but you got Andrew Kittredge, who has elite chase rates. You had a great article on that the other day about those chase rates. Plus, he's had some experience closing. You have other guys who have experience closing. Sir Anthony Dominguez was kind of a solid closer last year after you were a bit wishy-washy with Craig Kimbrell. Gregory Soto didn't have closing experience with the O's, but he has had that in the past. I think there is a lot of depth in this bullpen to be able to kind of elevate what it was last season because it was going through so much. Gregory Soto, like I just said, brings that lefty leverage that's needed in the bullpen and just under 11 Ks per 9 innings. Albert Suarez could end up making it into this bullpen. Cade Povich, who threw 2 scoreless innings against the Phillies the other day. So I think that there is a lot of depth and there is potential, but I do think that it will come down to if Bautista's back.
So top 5, I'm putting you on the spot here. Overreaction or not?
I would say not an overreaction right now.
I said the same. I don't think it's an overreaction. They had a 4.22 ERA as a unit last season. Top 5 would have been a 3.70 ERA or better.
Okay.
Andrew Kittredge last year had a 2.80. Gregory Soto, after the trade from Philadelphia, excluding his first 3 games in Baltimore, had a 1.10 ERA the latter half of the season, his final 18 games. Sir Anthony Dominguez had a sub-4. And Felix Bautista is back. Yeah. I think those 7, 8, 9 guys are going to be good enough where they should be below a 3.70. There is so much depth and talent in the bullpen. We saw them during live batting practice. I mean, they were facing Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Jordan Westberg. I think it was a gauntlet of Yennier Cano, Gregory Soto, Sir Anthony Dominguez,
and
Andrew
a lot
Kittredge.
Of left on left.
A lot of left on left, and they just dominated. I mean, those are really good hitters. And this back end of the bullpen looked really, really sharp. And I know it's live batting practice, and I'm not trying to read too much into that, but there's a lot of depth. And there are going to be a lot of options for Brandon Hyde in high leverage situations late in games. Not to mention you had a good season from Keegan Aiken last year.
Yeah.
You mentioned Albert Suarez, too. He could be somebody who gives you 2-3 innings at a time out of the bullpen if things start to get out of hand in a game. He can come in early and be a guy to just clean up for you and make sure that the rest of the bullpen is rested and isn't going to get wasted in a blowout game. So I think there are a lot of factors to this bullpen being really good, and I think it's going to be a top 5 unit. I think it has the talent to do so, and I think you also brought in starting pitchers that expect to go 6+ innings in a game, and that helps the bullpen a lot. If Charlie Morton and Sugano are giving you 6 innings, the bullpen is going to be rested.
Yeah.
You don't need to use every guy every night. Somebody like Andrew Kittredge, you look at his splits based on how many days of rest that he has. If he has 2 days of rest, he is a infinitely better pitcher than he is coming off, pitching a back-to-back. So having starting pitchers that can go deep into games is going to help this bullpen, and I think the talent is just there enough to make this a top 5 unit in the game. Staying with the bullpen, one guy who has gotten a lot of hype too, outside of Sugano, this is somebody who may not make the team, but a lot of fans are excited about, and that's Rodolfo Martinez. So here's the take, and you can tell me if it's an overreaction or not. Rodolfo Martinez will be a big league contributor in 2025.
So I know exactly what your opinion is going to be here. So for that sake, I'm going to play the devil's advocate and for the sake of conversation, go with what I know to be the opposite of your take. I think that he definitely shocked some people in spring training with just the stuff. Supposedly hit 104 miles per hour with his four-seamer in Japan. He's coming over from experience in the Dominican, Japan, Mexico leagues. Sounds a little bit familiar to our guy Albert Suarez's path. I mean, he had experience in Japan and Korea and was kind of sought out by the O's, and no one expected Suarez to be that kind of guy that he was last season. I mean, he kept the O's afloat for many games last year. And no one could have predicted that. No, and definitely, I will say, and I know that you're going to mention this as well, Rodolfo Martinez definitely has trouble finding the zone. But O's have worked with guys like that in the past when the stuff is just really, really good, and then they end up being able to make sure that he can find the zone a little bit better than he did before. So for the sake of conversation, I'm going to say that this, it's really hard for me to say that it's not an overreaction. But for the sake of conversation, I will say that it's not an overreaction. I mean, Hyde did say last week in a scrum, you never want to get overly excited in spring training, especially this early. But when a guy's throwing high 90s with a high split like that and a slider, he can throw for strikes. That does open your eyes. So I will end that with that because I know what you're going to follow.
Listen, I hate to rain on a fun parade. I really do. I just think it's an overreaction.
Yeah.
I know the Orioles have done this before. They have brought guys in like Albert Suarez who have pitched overseas and found something, and they came back to the big leagues and it worked. They have also developed guys who could not find the strike zone, like Felix Bautista and Yennier Cano, and once they started pitching in the strike zone, they were really good. However, Rodolfo Martinez does have a hard time finding the strike zone. And the big difference between him and guys like Yennier Cano and Felix Bautista, who succeeded once they started putting the ball in the strike zone, the stuff from Felix and Yennier Cano were so overwhelmingly good that once you started putting it in the zone, it was still really, really good. And the reason I know that is because Felix Bautista and Yennier Cano, coming up throughout the minor leagues or, wherever they were pitching, they were averaging about 12, 13, 14 strikeouts per 9 innings.
That's a great point.
I mean, you can go back to Felix Bautista's 2021 season between high A, double A, and triple A. I know he walked 6 batters per 9. He struck out 15 batters per 9 innings. And Rodolfo Martinez, as electric as the fastball may be, he doesn't strike a lot of guys out.
Yeah.
Consistently throughout his career, he's had about 7, maybe 8 strikeouts per 9. So it's not the same ridiculous stuff that we saw from Bautista and Cano. And, I think Albert Suarez is just a really special case.
Yeah.
So I would love to be proved wrong here by Rodolfo Martinez and that he comes up at some point this season and is a big league contributor. I think we're overreacting a little bit. It's fun. I know he can throw really hard, and he has a good splitter, and that rules. I need him to find the strike zone.
Even though I said for the sake of conversation, I was going to say it wasn't an overreaction. I have to agree with you. I think it is an overreaction.
Yeah, but that doesn't make this conversation fun. We need to disagree on it, and that's a good take from you there.
Okay.
All right, I will move on here. On the topic of Rodolfo Martinez, another hot take is that a non-roster invite will make this team. I think the leading contributors are probably Rodolfo Martinez, Matt Bowman, Dylan Coleman, Emmanuel Rivera, Levon Soto. I would say those are probably the top candidates, but you can name somebody else as well. So somebody who is not on the roster, on the 40-man, will make this team out of camp.
I'm going to be short and sweet here. I think I'm going to go with no. I think that this is an overreaction because it's hard enough for some guys on the 40-man roster to break camp, like Kobe Mayo, Brian Baker, etc. I think that it is hard enough for guys who are fighting for a spot on this roster breaking camp to do so, and I don't necessarily think that any of those guys could be it. I mean, I think one of them that comes to mind would be Emmanuel Rivera, just because he was a contributor last season, but that was when the O's had a lot of injury and really needed him there. Same with Livan Soto. I don't think that someone not on the roster will make it.
I agree. I think it's an overreaction. I think if you are looking at position players, Emmanuel Rivera probably has the best case out of any non-roster invite to potentially make this team. But he would have to have an outstanding spring training, I think, because it feels like the position players are not set in stone, locked. But if we're assuming that Heston Kjerstad makes this team, that's 12. If we're assuming Ramon Laureano makes this team, that's 13. I think Emmanuel Rivera is going to have a hard time making that more of a conversation, given the contract that you just gave to Laureano and given what Mike Elias has said about Heston Kjerstad, what we have already seen from him this spring. That's going to be a hard thing for him to do. I think the bullpen, if there are already late injuries, it's possible that we see a non-roster invite make this team. I don't think it would be Rodolfo Martinez, though.
Yeah.
My hot take is that it would be Dylan Coleman.
I agree with that one. I do.
Dylan Coleman might be a dude. I know that we haven't seen anything from him in spring training yet.
Yeah.
But if I'm putting a hot take on somebody just becoming a dude out of nowhere, my guy's Dylan Coleman. Because his movement, his spin rate, he just kind of has it. And I know he hasn't put it together completely at the big league level, but, I mean, it was a solid season for Coleman in 2022. 68 games with a 2.78 ERA. That's good. 9.5 strikeouts per 9. Of course, he did walk 5 guys per 9 innings, and that is an issue that, you know, the Orioles have been able to work out with guys like Felix Bautista and Yennier Cano. I know his strikeout numbers aren't exactly what those two guys had, but we saw a solid big league season from Dylan Coleman. So if there's one guy that I would point to as a potential out-of-nowhere candidate, it's Dylan Coleman for me, but I do still think a non-roster invite making this roster is a bit of an overreaction. All right, Annie. Last big topic of conversation here. Adley Rutschman came into camp. Brandon Hyde said that he looked inspired, that he put in a ton of work in the offseason, both offensively and defensively. It is best shape of his life season, where we say that about just about everybody, but Adley Rutschman looks to be in great shape. Here's the take. Adley Rutschman has the best season of his career. Overreaction or not?
I think no. I think it is fair to assume this because he has come into camp with a field fire, more of a leadership role on his shoulders. I mean, he's now working with Gary Sanchez, who is a highly experienced catcher, which could do one of two things. Adley learns a lot from him in that sense as a defensive catcher, but also Adley is there to prove that he is the number one guy in front of Gary Sanchez. He looks stronger and leaner than last year. He has had 2 poor postseason experiences under his belt, so definitely more experience and more fuel to the fire in that sense. I will say that his first 2 seasons are going to be hard to match.
They're 2 really good seasons.
A 5.4 WAR in his rookie season is unreal. An 806 OPS, a 254 batting average, and then to follow that, his first All-Star season in 2023 with a 4.3 WAR, an 809 OPS. Obviously, a big drop-off from 2023 to 2024. Still an All-Star last season. First half of the season was a lot better than the second half, but I think that there is going to be a lot of kind of oomph to him to get back to that form and even be better than he was those first 2 seasons. I think experience says it all. The fact that he's had 2 postseason experiences under his belt is reason enough to say that it'll be the best his season of his career.
I agree. I mean, my notes here are that Adley looks yoked and locked in. And I think with more experience under his belt, as you mentioned, I don't think it's an overreaction. His rookie season was really, really good. As you mentioned, he had the best WAR of his career. He was a better hitter, I think you could say, in 2023. The batting average was better, on-base percentage was better, OPS was right around the same range, and he took a little bit of a step back defensively, just metric-wise, but he was still a really, really solid player. I think if the Orioles are going to make a push this year and, you know, advance in the playoffs, I would go as far as to say that this has to be the best season of
Yeah.
Adley Rutschman's career. I think this is the time where it needs to be. I mean, we saw a really generational year from Gunnar Henderson last year. It was one of the best seasons in Orioles history. I don't know if you can expect Gunnar Henderson to replicate what he did last season. I think Gunnar Henderson is still going to be really, really good. I think he's still going to be an MVP candidate. I would not be shocked at all if Gunnar Henderson finishes in the top 5 for American League MVP voting. But replicating what he did last year is going to be really, really hard to do. And look, I'm not saying at all that Gunnar Henderson was the only big contributor on this team last year. It was a team with, 4 All-Stars?
Yeah.
But Adley Rutschman, I think he would be the first one to tell you that he was disappointed with the second half of his season last year. And I think he is going to continue to step up. And I think this is the year that we see Adley Rutschman take the step from stardom to superstardom. Because I think over the past 2 or 3 seasons, you can make an argument that Adley Rutschman was the best catcher in baseball. He is, I think, certainly top 2 or 3. You can look at Contreras in Milwaukee. I think you can look at Cal Raleigh in Seattle. Like, there are guys around the league that are right there. Will Smith in LA, of course. There are catchers around the league that are right there with Adley Rutschman. I think this season he has the opportunity to take the next step and be the runaway best catcher in baseball. He has the talent. He has the ability to do it. And I think the Orioles need him to take that step and to kind of be a 1B to Gunnar Henderson's 1A as they lead this team.
I also think that because his plate approach is so advanced at a young age, and now he's gone through, like I mentioned, those 2 postseason experiences, he can get back to just focusing on, I mean, his plate approach last season, even though he didn't have his best season, was still really, really good. I mean, 83rd percentile in strikeout percentage, 89th percentile in whiff percentage, and that's not even as good as it was compared to 2023 when he was younger. So I think that now, if he hones in that experience from the past 2 seasons, postseasons, and then obviously with what he's focused on this offseason, I think that the advanced plate approach, the more experience, and just his kind of more attention and focus to being better and coming back from a fairly poor second half of the season for him.
Yeah.
I think that there is a lot for him to get back to and be the best that he can.
Yeah, I think this could be the best season of his career. I don't think it's an overreaction to say that will be the case. Did we agree on all of these hot takes outside of Rodolfo Martinez? Are overreactions and underreactions? Proper reactions?
I think the Rodolfo one was the only one.
We're too aligned with our takes
I know we
here,
are.
Annie. We're just same wavelength.
Maybe this last one we will disagree.
Maybe this last one. I
It's
lied before when
arguably
I
the
said
most
Adley Rutschman
important
was
one.
the final topic of conversation. Here's the final question I have for you. You tell me whether it's an overreaction or not. Tyler O'Neill finds an even tighter shirt to wear.
Before I get into this one, we did disagree on the Heston Kjerstad one.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. This one, I mean, this one is just this is a hilarious one
Hey,
because
thanks. I try.
I'm really proud of you for this one.
Thank you.
I think that he will not find an even tighter shirt.
Wow.
I do think that he will ask for the smallest size uniform that they offer,
Yep.
but I mean, it was really funny last week when Hyde said in a media scrum that he really likes tight shirts.
I mean, listen, if you were built like Tyler O'Neill, you would probably try to find a tighter shirt as well, which is why I'm saying this is not an overreaction. I think Tyler O'Neill will find an even tighter shirt to wear.
He's like the Incredible Hulk.
That dude, again, Tyler O'Neill comes from a bodybuilding family. He looks like a bodybuilder.
Looks like Wreck-It Ralph.
It's crazy. It's crazy how big Tyler O'Neill is. So I don't think this is an overreaction. I think Tyler O'Neill will find a tighter shirt to wear. I think he can do it. I believe in him. I think if one exists in the world, then Tyler O'Neill will find it.
Well, hey, we're arguing on the most important take of the season.
I also think it's entirely possible that he isn't even wearing tight shirts. Like, he's just kind of built like
just
that.
Normal size
They're just
shirts.
normal size
I
shirts
agree.
for everybody else. And he's just built like that. And it looks like he is wearing like a skin tight Under Armour, but he's just kind of not. That could be the takeaway here. And I would be afraid if that was the takeaway.
I would also be afraid.
But I still believe in him. I think he can find one. But I think that'll just about do it for our hot takes, for our overreactions and proper reactions, and this week's edition of The Bird's Nest. Thank you so much for following along with us live here on Facebook and YouTube. We are live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. on those two platforms, or you can catch us after the fact on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts or your digital shows. You can find us here on The Bird's Nest. Again, I usually say big thank you to Amy Jennings behind the scenes for producing this one. Amy Jennings is down in West Palm covering national spring training. So, even if you're an Orioles fan, go check out our MASN Nationals covers too. Amy Jennings and Bobby Blanco are doing a great job down there as well. We will have more Orioles spring training coverage. There are going to be more ludicrous takes over the next few weeks that we will inevitably break down. We will talk about spring training storylines, spring game storylines, all that fun stuff. So make sure you tune in with The Bird's Nest and on our MASN Orioles social feeds. But for Annie Klaff, I am Brendan Mortensen, and we'll catch you next time.